Hey guys, so today we're going to be just going through a Retrieval Augmented Generation chatbot inside N8N. So building on the last video that we did and just looking to, I guess, expand on that and going into a bit around what RAG is. So obviously to start off with, you're going to come into N8N, you're going to create yourself a new workflow. And before we kind of get too stuck into it, we're going to just talk a little bit about what a RAG is. So I just got a little demo here, or a little diagram here for you that we'll kind of talk through. But yeah, essentially we want to talk through a bit around what RAG is. So to keep it, I guess, simple, it's Retrieval Augmented Generation. So it combines a knowledge base that we can set and then activates or utilizes the power of an LLM to generate responses based on that. So why it's useful, obviously it keeps answers accurate, generates grounded data, reduces hallucinations and like assumptions and things like that. So in terms of real world use, like fantastic tool to utilize as alongside a customer support bot, knowledge assistants, and then internal company GPTs as well. So you can see we've got a bit of a diagram here. So obviously we start off with the prompt. So that's going to be the question that the person is asking. Next, that information basically goes to a document or a vector store, and it looks through those responses or looks through the information on there and basically retrieves that information and provides it to your language model or your GPT. It will then basically select the most accurate answer and obviously there are some things that we can do to try and make that as accurate as possible, which we'll go through today. But basically what it does is it takes the document, puts it into chunks, and then provides it into your LLM in a slightly more digestible way. And then essentially what we'll do after that is provide a response based on the information that it's able to provide. So we'll go into the actual build itself. So there's essentially two components that you need to put together to be able to do this. Firstly, we need to get that information inside the vector store, and we need to kind of decide how we're going to go about setting it up. So first thing that we're going to want to do is get that information inside the vector store. So we're going to just set up a trigger for this one. As we know, we need to always start with a trigger. We'll start with a manual one. And then we're going to go and grab our document. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a Google Drive node, and then we're going to download a file. So essentially in terms of setting up your Google credentials, I've already done it, but we'll run through essentially how you want to do it. So before you can kind of do anything else, you want to come over to Google Cloud, create yourself an account if you haven't. By default, you're going to have a project up here called default project. If you want to make yourself a new one, you can, or just use the default one. As you can see, I've got one here. And then there's a couple of things that you want to do. So first and foremost, you want to come down to API and services. I recommend when you find it, just pinning it here because we're going to be coming to this one quite a fair bit. So then we want to go to enable API and services. I really recommend having a bit of a think about the different APIs that you're going to use because you can do this all at the same time. So you don't have to keep coming back and forth. Obviously for this instance, we're going to be using the Google Drive API. And so what we can see here, Google Drive. And then I've already enabled it, but what you guys will see here is rather than manage or try, you'll see enable. So you want to click that one, you'll get a little thing like this that says enabled. So now essentially that means that we've allowed the API access to this particular functionality on Google Cloud. So once we've done that, the next thing we want to do is again in API and services is come over to credentials. So if you don't already have credentials set up, you want to set up a new OAuth 2.0 client ID. You'll have essentially a project in here. So you can see I've got a couple in here, or you can go create credential OAuth. And then when you create it, it'll ask you to, as we can see in here, provide some information. So the name of it, so I've just set mine as N8N local. What's really important is that you get this information here, so the URL redirect. So that's basically just confirming where it's going to be sending the information, or the information request is going to be coming from. And if it doesn't have this, it won't allow it. So in order to grab this one, you want to come back to N8N. Basically you want to get your credentials, and then what we can see here is by default you'll have this one here. You just want to copy it, come back here and paste it in here, hit save, and so that's the next step done. What you want to do after that, again in API and services, is the OAuth consent screen, and then come down to clients, and again you want to create a client. So within here we can see so the next thing you want to do is come down to audience. So that's just slightly above clients. And then what you'll see in here is we're in testing. So what you want to then do is basically go add a user, and what you're going to want to do is put in the email of the account that you want to have access to this. And you can set it to just whatever, like I recommend using whatever account that you've set up here. So for example, for me, it would be workflow automation. And this will basically choose or allow those specific users to access the Google Cloud. What's probably worth keeping in mind is that at the moment we're in this test mode. So you can see that by it's saying test users here. A couple of things to keep in mind is it does kind of have like I think from memory, it's about a 10-day or a 2-week limit. After that, you're going to have to come back in and basically re-add yourself again. That's obviously because it's supposed to be in a test mode, so that it like is more of a security feature. Definitely while you're starting to get used to things, I recommend staying in this test mode, but essentially what we want to do is just when you're ready and you're happy and you're good to go, you definitely want to go publish. So this will just basically mean that you don't have those limitations around how many users you can have, but also you're not going to have any issues in terms of it essentially like having to resubmit credentials every 2 weeks. And the thing to keep in mind with that is that you don't really get a notification or anything. The only way you kind of pick up on that is because your workflows are going to fail when interacting with anything Google related. So just again, I forgot to mention in here, you want to grab your details here, so your client secret and your client ID. So you would obviously just go add secret. You want to copy that. If you need to save it, save it. Same thing with your client ID. Come back into here, and then what you would do is obviously paste your client ID here, client secret, make sure that this is set to all, and then you'll see this little sign in with Google button pop up here. Click on that, you'll get this one all the time, so just go to advanced, and then you want to essentially go to, so continue. It'll ask what you want access to, you just want to click continue, and now you're good to go, and you can see we've got that account connected. So now what we'll be able to do is find files or folders that we're looking for within our Google Drive. So for example, I set up one a little bit earlier and that I just called Hamilton and Gray that we'll be using for the sake of this demonstration. So what I should then be able to do is search it in here, and it'll have the document here. So what we can see is we've got the resource as a file, or if you want to find a folder, you could do that, change your operation, but obviously for this, we're going with download. So now that that one's done, what we can do is we can execute the step, and we can see we've got our document here. So now it's going to open up Word, and we can see the information that we have in here matches what we have in here. Cool, so that's now all good to go, which is awesome. So the next thing we need to do now that we have the file is actually put it into our database, or our vector database. So personally, I prefer to use Pinecone at the moment. Some people prefer to use like Supabase and things like that. But what we're going to want to do here is basically add a document to our vector store. So again, similarly, you're going to have to come to Pinecone, set up your credentials and things like that. So from the Pinecone home store, if you don't have an account, log in and make one. And then what you want to do is come down to your API keys, create an API key, and then get them into N8N. So in here, we'll go here, and then you're just pasting your API key, and then when you refresh it, you'll get a confirmation here to basically make sure that it's all connected and working properly, and similarly just all for that option there as well. Essentially what we want to do now is we want to choose where or which index this is going into. So what I'm actually going to do is come back here and we're going to create a new index. So for this one, I'm going to call it Hamilton, because that's the one of the partner names for this pretend legal firm that we're going to be doing this through. Next, you want to come across here. My preference is to use text embedding 3 small, so most cost efficient. And then what's really important is to come down here and make sure you've set the dimensions to 1536. So we'll go through why that matters a little bit later. Come down here, you can pretty much leave the rest as default. That's all you need to do. So we'll go create index now. And what we can see is we've got our index here. So green, good to go. One thing to keep in mind, we're going to be looking for this in the future, this namespaces function here. That will come back and make sense in a little bit. So what we want to do then next is come back to Pinecone, or come back to N8N and our Pinecone node, and we can see we've got Hamilton here. Embedding batch size, kind of up to you. You can just leave it for now. The next thing that you do want to do is go to Pinecone namespace, and it's really important that this matches this here. So what we're going to do is just go Hamilton, and there's a few other things that we need to set up here. So if we come out now, we can see a few things. We can see this here. So this is where we want to essentially select our embeddings model, and this is why we selected text embedding 3 small. So it's really important that matches up. And then with your dimensions, you want to set that to the same thing that we set earlier. So we had 1536 for our dimensions. So we want to do that again here. In terms of setting up your credentials, you need to do that in OpenAI. I know in a previous video I spoke around preferring OpenRouter. Unfortunately, OpenRouter doesn't have access to this at the moment, or N8N doesn't have the ability to access this through OpenRouter. So we've got to use our OpenAI keys. So in terms of accessing those and getting those set up, we'll come to our OpenAI account, go to the API platform, log in, and once in here, you want to come down to your API keys, which you access from here. Go to your profile, API keys, generate a new secret, give it a name, select the project you want it to go into, and again, recommend saving these if you don't already have them. And then you're going to come back to N8N, create a new credential, put your API key in here. This isn't required, you can leave this the same. So you're just basically putting them in here. And if you need any help, you can go to Open Docs, OpenAI, and it will talk you through how to basically get your credentials set up. So OpenAI credentials, we can come down here, so leave it blank, get your secret key, and then basically some other documents set up and things like that. So utilize that information if you need it. Obviously I've already got one set up, so we're just going to use that. And then the next one we have on here is our document. So this one here, we just want to basically use our default data loader. And again, text splitting, you can do custom, you don't have to. It's completely up to you, but if you do custom, I recommend using it. you'll see the extra option down here, and then we want to use recursive. So it splits it into chunks recursively, and is just generally like the go-to use case here. So what we've got is our chunk size here. So that's essentially how many characters are going to be in each chunk, and then overlap. So again, recommend just keeping the overlap at 0. The chunk size, it's up to you. 1,000 is the default, and generally just what I go to. So this is sort of the first part of our workflow here, where we're going to be getting our document into here. So if we execute this one here, we can see that the node executed successfully, although it doesn't look like it worked. So we'll try and have a quick look to see what happened here. Cool. So the issue was that we were actually inserting binary data. So we want to make sure that we have that set properly. You can choose it to detect the MIME type. So that's like the file type. You can leave that as automatic, or if you know that you have a specific type coming in, you can do that. So we'll try that again. And looking this time, it looks like it's working a bit better, and that things are working properly. So now our document should be in Pinecone, ready to go for us. So we'll give this one a bit of a refresh. And what we can see now is we've got a namespace. So this is essentially our document, or the data from our document in here, which is awesome. So now we can see that that's good and ready to go. So now that we've got that done, the next sort of one we want to build out is our chatbot. So if you guys remember from the first video, we're going to basically just copy that exact same chatbot. But what we're going to do is put a little bit more customization in it to make it really specific for the use case that we're putting together here. So as normal, we need to get our Open Router chat model. Again, by default, you guys know I normally like to use GPT Mini, Open Router account credentials, which we went through last time, but just as a reminder, if you come to Open Router, log in, and then you want to go to keys, API keys, create your new API key, copy your API credentials, and then pop them in here. So if we go new one, again, just API key allowed. If you need any help with accessing it, again, it's in here. So you can see the Open Router API documentation. You can come here. So probably just, one thing to keep in mind is making sure that you go through and understand how to enter these credentials. So for example, with Open Router, in order to access this properly, you need to put bearer space your API key. So for example, I would come into here, and if I was making a new one, and what you can do that's handy is if you go to expression, you can see it. So you would go bearer space API key. So for example, if your API key was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's how you would put it in. If you just put the API key in, it's not going to work. So again, when you save that, you'll get a notification, basically just informing you that the connection has worked, and that you're good to go. And again, just by default, GPT 4.1 Mini, just at the moment, is probably the best in terms of the balance between cost and an output. So next thing that we want to do here is we want to actually grab a tool, and we need to provide our agent with the ability to actually use and gain the information from our vector store. So what you do is come down here, and then you can see vector store. So you've got a bunch of different ones here. Obviously, we're working with Pinecone, so let's grab a Pinecone vector store, and then we want to choose the index to start with. So we put our information into Hamilton, so that's the one we're going to use. So in terms of the limit, that's how many essentially options or responses it will come back with. You can leave that at default. And then in terms of the description, you're basically just giving your AI agent the information to know how it is to use this tool. So something along the lines of you will call this tool to get the vector store information and use this information to answer the user's question. And then we obviously want to make sure that we retrieve the document to use for our AI agent. You'll just use the same Pinecone API or the same Pinecone credentials that you use down here. And one thing to keep in mind is we need to get our another embeddings model. So again, we'll go embeddings, OpenAI, and then make sure that we've got the dimensions set up correctly again. So 1536. Cool. So now our agent should be able to call this tool. But before we do that, a couple of extra things we can do if we want to put memory in it. So again, we went into memory in the last video, but again, it will just help provide more of a conversational flow rather than having one question, one answer, and not being able to remember what was being discussed. Within our AI agent, a couple of things that we want to make sure we've set up. We can leave this as is for the moment because the way that we're going to be using this is just through N8N and the chat model here. So that's the same with our prompt here. Next thing we want to do is add a system message. So basically this is going to provide the information for what the purpose is of our AI agent. So for example, you might put something along the lines of, if we go back to our document here, so we know that we have a law firm called Hamilton and Gray. So you might go, you are a customer support agent for the law firm Hamilton and Gray. Your purpose is to provide customers with the required information from the vector store you have access to as a tool. Cool. So it's good to put some, I guess, information in terms of how you want it to respond, how you want it to react, what you want it to do, what you don't want it to do. So basically, if you put something like this into ChatGPT, specify the parameters as well that you want it to have, it will give you generally a pretty good answer, and then you can kind of refine it a little bit more as well. Some things that's also important to do is to make sure you tell it what not to do. So for example, with something like this, you want to really specify that it's not to do things like answer questions, I guess using information that's not part of the vector store. You don't want it to basically function as ChatGPT in the sense that if someone was to ask a question like, who was the first man on the moon? You don't want people burning through credits and your usage asking questions like that. You just want it to basically reject questions like that and direct them back to, I guess, more your business and questions around that. So what I'm actually going to do is just basically put together a system message using ChatGPT, and this is the base. So just give me one moment. Cool. So basically what I just put into ChatGPT was, help me create a system message for a RAG chatbot in N8N. This is what I have so far. You're a customer support agent for the law firm Hamilton and Gray. Your purpose is to provide customers with required information from the vector store tool you have access to. Things to keep in mind, it should be friendly, professional, and try to be concise as possible. Keep answers short. It should not answer general knowledge questions and not related to the business. It should not make assumptions. And if it does not know the answer, it shouldn't make up an answer. Provide an example of a response it may use as well. So ChatGPT has popped out this for me. And what we can see, if we change this to an expression and full screen it, it's got some guidelines, some example responses, and kept it there. So pretty basic. You can definitely, and I definitely do recommend that you get a lot more detail in this, but for the sake of this video, it's just more of an FYI, or more of just a basic setup. Cool. So now we want to save that one, and we should be good to start asking some questions. Okay guys, so yeah, now we're going to go and actually give our AI agent a try. What's really important is, again, you make sure that your namespace in here is set up correctly. So you can do that through options and then pinecone namespace, make sure that that matches. So what we're going to do is come now to the document and we're going to choose something. So we're going to ask our AI agent about what services they provide relating to family law and see if we get the right response. So what services do you provide in relation to family law? And what we should now see is it grabbing this information. We can see it working through. And what we can see here is Hamilton and Gray Legal provides family law services, including divorce applications, including the fee, child custody disputes, binding financial agreements. So what we can do if we come back here, we see these things here. So divorce applications, child custody disputes, and binding financial agreements. So we can see it's pulled that information there, which is awesome. So now we can basically see that that's working. And what is really important about having this memory in here is it allows us to have more of a conversation. So if we were to go back to the first or the earlier video that I posted, we can see that the benefits of having that. So now we basically have a fully fledged AI agent that uses our specific information and data in order to answer questions for our customers. What you can do, I guess, and where this comes in helpful is like if you were to have something like a respond to webhook, you can basically set this up so that, for example, if you had a website with a chatbot, for example, like on my work, my website workflow automation, we've got a chatbot, and the way what happens is the customer's question or query in here, we put it in, and what will happen is it will activate our workflow, send the query into our AI agent, in which case we would need to make a small change here and go to define below. And then essentially what we would do is send our webhook information, or in this case, we'll just use some mock data and just use that. And what we can see here is that now we can take this, and for example, if this was the customer query, we could drag that into here, and so it would answer this query here. So for example, if I was to come back to here, and rather than name, it was question, and we were to make the question that the customer was asking or the client was asking, what services do you offer relating to family law? What we would then be able to do is change this and go question. And now what we should see is basically same thing. So we'll execute this. Oh, cool. So what's happening here is we're having an issue with the trigger ID. So it needs to get a session ID. So again, you would need to add that as a parameter within your webhook. So for example, if we were to change this to session ID, and the session ID was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the reason why we need this is because we're using the simple memory function, so it needs to know the ID. So what we would then do is drag this across here, and that way it knows that we're essentially working with this one here. But just for the sake of this, I'm just going to deactivate it so that we can try this and see how it goes. So we've got our question here, which we've done as an expression, and then we can see we had an issue. So what we want to do is just maybe have a quick try and see if we can figure out this. So expect to find prompt in an input field called chat input. Cool. So we'll have a play around and figure out what happened there. But what we might do in this instance instead is just change this to basically just copy the text that's coming in there, and then what we should see is our answer come out based on the same thing that we had as well. So we can see here in terms of our output, we can see here the same response there. So that's just a bit of a quick one today, guys, and yeah, thanks for those that have stayed all the way through this video. Yeah, obviously few little errors across the board there, but you know, that's, I guess, part of all of this is that, you know, I'm still learning as well, but it just probably shows you as well that even without really strong knowledge around coding, that you can work through some of these troubles. If you're ever kind of stuck, just recommend you go and hit up your favorite LLM, whether that's ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever it is, and usually you can kind of work through some of these problems. But yeah, thanks again, and if any of you guys are looking for solutions or want a copy of this workflow, feel free to let me know in the comments, or you can visit our website as well. I'll have that pinned in the comments as well, for you guys to be able to go and have a look. And yeah, looking forward to getting a few more videos, and we'll continue to build on what we have been doing here, but just wanted to get this one out for you guys. And yeah, thanks again for watching, and looking forward to getting a few more videos out over the next couple of days. Just really quickly, I came back and yeah, had a bit of a play around, and yeah, was able to figure out the issue. So just within the webhook, just a couple of things, we needed to change it to chat input because that's what it was looking for. And then within here as well, we just needed to add a little equal sign here, and then so just have equal json.chat input. Then if we execute this one, we can see now that it's actually working properly. So really basic solution, but as I sort of mentioned, just using ChatGPT in order to figure that one out. And so we can see now that we're actually getting that output there. Thanks again. Cheers.